This is such an important issue, and I'm glad we have people working on the ground. We often don't think about how mental health issues affect these communities. I'm joined by Bill Wagner, Director of Centro Savila, Jessica Goodkind is founder of the Refugee Wellbeing Project, Kay Bunke is Director of the New Mexico Asian Family Center, and Eric Naheba is a refugee from the Democratic Republic of Congo who has also worked with the Refugee Wellbeing Project. Thank you all for being here. Eric, I'd like to start with you. You came here 10 years ago from the Democratic Republic of Congo. What were the biggest challenges for you coming from a place of trauma and war and settling in a completely new country and new community?
Well, the biggest challenges were, first of all, it was the language. As a new person coming to a new country that never been before, and we don't speak English in our country, so the language was the biggest challenges. We were not able to communicate with anybody, so we had to depend on other people to help us with anything, even grocery shopping, anything, even something that you might think that's it won't be a problem was a problem for us because we did not know how to explain ourselves. And of course we had other challenges, being away from our country. It was a big issue as well. Loneliness. We knew nobody. We could spend a whole day in the house. That was a big challenge.
Is that what you did? You would stay in the house or your room?
Pretty much, 19? Yeah. The only time that I left my house was during appointments, because when you come here, you have to go through a lot. Doctor's appointment and the refugee resettlement agencies, you have to go to a lot of places. Those were the only times that I left my house. Otherwise, I was staying in the house all day. But also the weather was also a challenge.
Weather?
Yes. Yes, it was very cold. We never seen the snow before. That was also a big challenge.
Jessica, Eric worked with the Refugee Wellbeing Project, which you founded. Are these kinds of experiences very common? I mean, what does that mean for refugees as they're trying to resettle here when they're facing these kinds of challenges? What impact does that have?
Well, it has a really big impact, and I think often when we think of refugees, we think about the trauma that they've experienced in their home countries, which is the reason for someone who comes to the United States as a refugee, they're escaping some kind of war, conflict, or persecution. So usually they've survived a lot of difficulties, but what we know is that the stressors that people face once they resettle in a new country contribute just as much to mental health problems. So the things that Eric describes, like the language, not knowing anyone, the social isolation, having to really start over in a new place and get connected to all new resources, including jobs, housing, educational resources, all of those can be very challenging.
You came from a lot of violence and conflict, Eric. I mean, did it feel like a relief to get here, or is it just, oh, I've got another set of challenges?
I mean, the challenges are different. You cannot compare loneliness to safetyness. I mean, not just myself, even other refugees or other immigrants have said that, and even myself, even though we had to go through those challenges, but we were so happy to be in a place where we have safetyness, where we don't have to run every other day because of gunshot and stuff like that.
Kay, many of the people who came to Albuquerque in the Asian community came here in the 1970s as refugees from war in Southeast Asia. What kinds of challenges did they confront as they tried to settle in a new place, and how did that affect their mental health and well-being as they tried to start a new life here?
Yeah, it's the same as any new group coming in. They face the same challenges, language issues still. are a problem today, so many years later, so many decades later. Mental health in Asian community is very often passed over. It's not something people talk about because of the shame, because of how taboo it is in our communities. The stigma attached to mental health is still something that our families don't want to come forward and talk about. So some of the issues that we saw in terms of depression, in terms of the trauma, it still exists today, and only now are some of them willing to get mental health services, and that's because we finally have a center that's focused on the Asian community, and that means that it's culturally sensitive. We have people who are running the agency from the community, so there's a better understanding of what the families have gone through, and the language component, right? That's the most critical piece. We keep thinking, oh, you know, our community isn't going to seek counseling. But once we brought on like a Vietnamese speaking counselor, then we've got people through the door. It makes a huge difference to have that cultural sensitivity to your services.
You're the New Mexico Asian Family Center, so it's Vietnamese, but is it predominantly Vietnamese? Is all kinds of people from?
It's Pan-Asian. So
Okay.
we last year served people who represented 20 different ethnicities. We did services in over 7 different languages. We see people from South Africa. We see people from Russia. Predominantly, yes, our community is more Vietnamese and Chinese, and that's if you're looking at Asian alone. So if you're looking at mixed race, then we've got Filipino community and South Asian community too.
Bill, what about the folks that you work with at Centro Savila? These tend to be immigrants from Mexico and South America, Central America. Are they seeking out services, or are there barriers to that? And if they want them, are there enough services?
Well, there are plenty of barriers that people face in terms of getting access to care in the first place in New Mexico. The behavioral health community in New Mexico has gone through a number of shifts, especially people serving the poor. And immigrants and refugees tend to come in without a lot of resources. That's not all immigrants and refugees, but most. And refugees are immediately eligible for Medicaid. And the number of people in the behavioral health community that are actually serving Medicaid clients has been dwindling. And so it's very hard to get access. When you add to it the barrier of culturally and linguistically appropriate care, it makes it even more difficult to find somebody that you can really connect with, because, as Eric was saying, you know, that isolation of not having the language when you come here, as most immigrants and refugees don't have. They, you know, have a difficult time really expressing their emotions, their feelings, which is central to doing care for patients with mental health needs. As Eric and Jessica were talking about, for the Latino community, Mexicans mostly, because we are bordering Mexico and New Mexico, you know, there's a added trauma to the trauma of dislocation, whatever event happened in their home country, or the difficulty of resettling here. There's the trauma of crossing borders, and many of the people that we see have had perilous experiences coming to the United States, and that experience adds to what sometimes they call the triple trauma of refugees and immigrants that have come to the United States.
Are there more issues arising now that you find challenging because of there's a lot of anti-immigrant rhetoric, there's fear of deportation, there's actual deportation?
Yeah.
Where families have been separated.
Yeah, and I think one of the main things that people don't understand is that this really affects our whole community. There are somewhere around 13 million immigrants living in the United States right now, and 1 in 3 children in the United States by 2020, in a couple of years, will be children of immigrants. Many of them live in mixed status families, meaning that maybe one of their parents came to the United States unauthorized, but they are U.S. citizens. 88% of the children of immigrants are U.S. citizens, and so they have rights, and they deserve access to care. What has been happening and what we've seen in our clinic, and I've talked to other providers that work with Mexican immigrants around Albuquerque, is that there was a lull after the election in which people were afraid to access health care. They stopped coming in because they didn't feel safe because of a lot of the hyperbole and rhetoric that's been out there about people being deported, people coming to healthcare institutions, people going to schools, people going to the Walmart, people meaning ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Jessica, a lot of people who have gone through war, displacement, trauma, also have a lot of resiliency. I don't want to sugarcoat what's going on for some folks, but they have a lot of resiliency. So how do you and Eric tap into that with the Wellbeing Project, the Refugee Wellbeing Project?
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, because really one of the foundational ideas of the Refugee Wellbeing Project is that refugees and other newcomers come here and they bring with them really valuable knowledge, experience, and skills that Americans can really benefit from and learn from. So our project is really based on the idea of mutual learning, that as newcomers come to this country, there's a lot that they need to learn, including the language and learn about the different cultures here and cultural norms, but that they have a lot to teach and share with others. And that's important, I think, not only for Americans to learn from the cultures and strength and resilience of refugees, but also because one of the challenges of being a refugee or immigrant is that sometimes the valued social roles that you had in your home country are lost. And so that plays a huge part in people's mental health. To have who they are and what they bring and their knowledge, to have that valued is really important. So our project, we bring together American students, college students, and refugee families to learn from each other in learning circles where we have cultural exchange time, and to work one-on-one on learning concrete things like English language as well. And then also the students and refugee families work together to mobilize resources based on the goals and unmet needs of refugee families.
And Kay, I know you are working to integrate cultural traditions in the New Mexico Asian Family Center to make sure people get the help they need. So maybe a Western model of mental health or therapy isn't the best.
Right, and that's a great point to bring up, because so often when we come to the U.S. and you've got all these grants and funders who are pushing for you to show evidence-based practices, and what we know is practice-based evidence really is what works, right? Maybe counseling doesn't make a lot of sense because it's not something that's so common in a lot of Asian countries. So thinking about how do we create healing circles that really lift up spaces where we can do traditional modalities of healing, right? Things that we've practiced for generations. How do we start to integrate that and make that valuable in our community and make that something of value to other people, so that our community really can get the help that they need?
And Bill, what would it make it easier for the immigrants you're working with to get the help if they need it? They're going through crisis or grieving or trauma.
Well, you know, surprisingly, New Mexico, especially for the Spanish-speaking community, which is by far the largest non-English speaking community, has a shortage of healthcare providers that are linguistically appropriate. So one of the things that we've spent a lot of time at Centro Savila doing is trying to really create a pipeline of providers that will serve that community. I was shocked when I started my practice, is that how many people were being referred to me, because I was one of the few bilingual therapists in town. And there are many more now, but we have a provider shortage to begin with. And the average age of providers in New Mexico is 57. So that shortage is going to get greater as people retire. And the provider community, for the most part, the demographic of it does not meet the demographic of our state. And so what we really need to do is create a more diverse workforce, a workforce that will meet the linguistic and cultural needs of our community.
We're almost out of time, but Eric, I just wanted to ask you, I know you're working on a graduate degree, you got married, you're expecting a child. What helped you succeed, and how can you help others? What are you doing to help others follow in that path?
Well, I think education is the key.
Education.
Yes. I mean, it was hard at the beginning still, but yeah, I had to go through ESL classes.
English as a second language.
Yes. Then I was able to get my undergrad, and I'm still going for my graduate school. Then when I said education is the key, it helps you everywhere, not just in school, but also to get employment, to get to know other people, to get to know the system. And most of people who have been struggling the most are those who don't have the basic education. And if you have that, you should be able to succeed.
Well, I want to thank you all for coming and talking about this. I appreciate it.